It feels like it's just everywhere, doesn't it? That constant low-level hum of worry, the feeling that things are a little bit on edge. People call this the age of anxiety, and for a lot of us, it really feels like a defining feature of modern life. But is this just a vibe, or is there something more to it? All right, let's actually dig into the data and see what's going on. So let's start with a number that's, well, it's pretty hard to wrap your head around. According to the World Health Organization, over 1 billion people across the globe are living with a mental disorder. Just let that sink in for a second. That's about 1 in every 7 people on the planet. This isn't some small niche issue. This is a massive global public health reality. And when you look inside that 1 billion number, something really interesting pops out. Anxiety and depressive disorders, they make up the huge majority of cases. We're talking more than 2/3 of the whole pie. So, while the world of mental health is really broad, it's pretty clear that anxiety is sitting right at the heart of the modern experience. Okay, so we've established this isn't just a fleeting feeling for a few people. We're looking at anxiety as this huge global phenomenon. So to really understand what's driving it, we need to get on the same page about what it actually is. It's a simple definition, but it's really powerful. Anxiety is that state of worry, tension, and unease. And look, it's a totally natural human response to stress. But the problem is when it becomes persistent, when it sticks around and starts to really affect your well-being. So the big question is, what is it about our modern lives that might be cranking up the volume on this feeling? So where do we even start to look for the sources of all this anxiety? Let's begin with something we all do, or try to do, every single night: sleep. I think most of us have felt that connection between a bad night's sleep and how we feel the next day. I mean, we've all been there, right? You toss and turn all night, you just can't get to sleep, and then the next day, every little thing feels like a huge deal. You're jumpy, you're irritable. Well, that feeling of being on edge, it isn't just in your imagination. There's a real scientific reason for it. And yeah, the science on this is crystal clear. This quote from a major study pretty much says it all. Increased anxiety is one of the most important consequences of sleep deprivation. Basically, when you don't sleep, the part of your brain that manages emotions, the amygdala, it just goes into overdrive. It makes you way more reactive to all the normal stresses of the day. It's not a maybe, it's a known outcome. But here's where it gets really interesting. It turns out that the type of sleep loss is what really matters. Pulling an all-nighter, what scientists call total sleep deprivation, that's the thing that really sends anxiety levels soaring. But just getting a couple of hours less than you normally would, or sleep restriction, that doesn't seem to have the same dramatic effect. So while a little less sleep might make you feel tired and groggy, going entirely without it is what truly puts your anxiety into high gear. Okay, so from what's happening when our eyes are closed, let's flip to what happens when they're wide open and, let's be honest, usually staring at a screen. Social media has totally changed our world, but what is it doing to our minds? First, you have to get a sense of just how much time we're talking about. This study on young adults is, frankly, eye-opening. A huge 84% spend 4 or more hours a day on social media. And get this, 40% are spending over 6 hours a day. This isn't just some casual hobby. For many, it's a massive part of their daily life. So, does all that time online actually matter? Well, this chart makes a pretty strong case that it does. As you look from left to right, you can see that as the hours spent on social media go up, the bars showing higher levels of anxiety get taller and taller. It's a really clear visual trend. And you can probably guess why. Things like constantly comparing your life to someone else's perfect highlight reel and that never-ending fear of missing out. And if you want to see the hard numbers, here they are. Researchers found what's called a moderate positive correlation between daily social media use and anxiety. You can think of it like a seesaw. As social media use goes up on one side, anxiety levels tend to go up on the other. Now, it's not a perfect one-to-one cause and effect for everyone, but the link is absolutely there, and it's statistically significant. All right, so we've looked inward at our sleep patterns, and we've looked outward at our screens. Now, let's zoom out to the biggest picture there is, the health of the planet we all share. Because for more and more people, the state of our environment is becoming a real source of deep-seated worry. And there's actually a name for this: eco-distress. The most important thing to get about this term is that it is not a disorder. Researchers are really clear on this point. It's a natural, logical, and frankly, understandable reaction to a very real and serious threat. It's what happens when you feel the emotional weight of seeing the world you depend on in trouble. So what does eco-distress actually feel like day to day? Well, emotionally, it can show up as sadness, grief, anger, or even this feeling of moral betrayal. And cognitively, It can mean you're constantly replaying worst-case scenarios in your head. You get that mental fog, you can't concentrate. And yeah, coming full circle, it can even make it hard to sleep. It really hits us in both our hearts and our mind. So, we've looked at some of the big drivers: our sleep, our screens, the state of our planet. And just knowing that, just acknowledging them, that's a huge first step. But what comes next? How do we actually respond when we feel these anxieties? Well, research into eco distress shows that we basically come to a fork in the road. One path is proactive. It's about channeling that worried energy into changing our lifestyle, taking collective action, or getting involved politically. But the other path, well, it's maladaptive. It leads to avoiding the news, to denial, or to this feeling of paralysis where you're just so overwhelmed you can't do anything at all. And this brings us to the really crucial point of all of this. The goal isn't to somehow eliminate worry entirely. Worry is a signal. It's telling us something important. The real key is to listen to that signal and find a way to balance our awareness of the problem with constructive action. It's about turning that anxious energy into something that fuels positive change, instead of letting it drag us down into despair. And really, that leaves all of us with a final, really vital question. In a world that gives us so many legitimate things to worry about, the great challenge for all of us, both as individuals and as a society, is to figure out how we turn that worry into meaningful, powerful, and constructive action.